The following is a production of UNO Television for KYNE TV. Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Allegiant Health and by Nebraskans for Public Television. Consider This with Carol Schrader, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome once again to UNO. Consider this. Going to college is sometimes difficult enough, but if you're underprivileged or do not come from a college background or are a minority student or any combination of those, it can be very difficult. It can be even difficult to think that you're worthy of college or college bound. I'm going to talk about the minority student situation today. My guests are Alan Black. He's minority recruiter for the College of Education here at UNO. VJ Jones-Williams is Director of Multicultural Student Support Services here at the university. And Annette Crowder is a Multicultural Student Support Specialist at UNO and used to work at Creighton.
Yes, I did.
Little experience in both the public and the private schools. Let's start with just recruiting minority students. And I think some of us that didn't have college, I was fortunate to have college graduate as parents. They didn't use those degrees in what they did, but so it wasn't a question if I'd go to college. It was, yes, I would, how was I going to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. But we want all students to feel worthy of college and that they can't have the potential to be college bound, but all students don't feel that way, do they?
I don't think so. I think a lot of times what you have is perhaps a preconditioning where students are getting to the point where they graduate from high school and they're thinking, well, this represents the end of the educational rainbow for me. So they start the process of thinking that I've got to go out, get a part-time job, full-time job, and start working 8 to 5. And if they haven't had traditionally in their family background somebody that went to college, or particularly their parents or guardian, then what happens is they don't think beyond the realm of being a 12th grader. So what we have to do as an institution is, if nothing else, plant the seed to let them know this is an option which is viable. This is an option which is obtainable. And if you can plant the seed, first of all, to make them believe that they have the ability to go, I think that is the first step in the process of getting someone from the high school ranks into college.
Now, Alan, since you work primarily in recruitment, we'll talk about that first, because you got to get them there before you can make sure that they stay. But recruitment and retention are huge issues in higher education, and various minority groups concerned about their students. And I think sometimes you feel like when you talk to some of these kids, because you go all over the city and all the high schools in the area, that maybe you've even reached a lot of them too late. You see a glimmer, but you don't know if they really have the belief that they can do it. Are we starting too late?
I never really take the position that I'm not going to be able to reach somebody, because I always feel that if I'm planting a seed and at least putting a thought in their head, it may not come to fruition, let's say in 99, maybe it'll be the year 2000, but if you can start the process of reversing a negative style of thinking, or thinking that you're not worthy, somewhere down the line the light's going to go on and they're going to say, hey, I can do this. I think with UNO, because the median age is 27 to 28, you're starting to see a strong non-traditional base of individuals who are saying, yes, I can do this. This is obtainable. And sometimes maybe it takes them being out in the world, working 8 to 5 and 2 jobs, 3 jobs before they say, I need an education to really go ahead and improve the quality of my life. So I kind of look at it not in terms of instant gratification. I'm planting seeds for the future that once it all comes to fruition, the students will then say, yes, I can do this.
Okay, anybody feel free to pipe in. I didn't want to pigeonhole any of you. The issue of, I had a fear, even though I knew I would go to college, of even taking an ACT or an SAT test. And then if I thought my high school grades, the transcript just wasn't stellar. I mean, you may have, and this can happen with any student, not just minority, that they didn't really know how to study or appreciate study, or maybe started a little late where they started to pick up some speed and momentum, but their transcripts aren't going to look real good. I mean, do you have a hard time convincing them, hey, there's some strong points in here that, or your leadership activities or whatever? I mean, what goes into saying, you've really got the right stuff here? on paper. It doesn't look like it.
The whole dynamics in terms of the recruiting of students, and especially with the ACT, is systematic. It really is, because there's a whole lot that goes into it. Particularly when you're working with first-generation students, you actually have to educate them on the process of seeking higher education. You have to tell them this is what the ACT scores are. You have to basically, you can go so far as to say these are the parameters. This is a perfect score. This is the area that you need to hit. You also look at the sub-scores that are on the ACT score, that some students will be like, I didn't do well. Yeah, you did excellent in English. The math portion is it. Take it again, and let's see if we can at least increase the math portion, because you did excellent here. You did wonderful in your social science as well as the natural science. Those are the various components that go into educating the students on the taking of the test. Most of the students will come from a background where that wasn't important, and where no one is basically saying, let's prepare you for this. That's why the goal at UNO right now is to try and reach those students from the 9th grade, because we're looking at those transcripts from the 9th grade on. We want to see what you have been doing. Yeah, your GPA is going to show us cumulatively what you've been doing since the 9th grade, but we want to see each year what that is, because it tells a story. The ACT score, that composite score, is just a cumulative of piggybacking off of the GPA. But sometimes you have students that are not processing that, and so that's when we go in there and we at least assist them with the process, the educating the students on seeking higher education, because that's what it's going to take.
Now at UNO, we don't, we don't have a. I mean, many schools. Creighton, I'm sure, is a lot more selective in the students it takes. Although in the areas of minority recruiting, it may allow a little more latitude. But still, this is an open admissions school. But still, you want youngsters. I mean, you're not going to really turn too many people away unless they. I mean, I don't think that they would if they really have a desire and you can work with them. But how do you say? And I'm sure you don't, Alan, say you don't have a prayer. You would never say that to a child. I mean, who would? But how do you say? You're really going to need to work. I mean, we're really going to need to work. We'll support you when you get there, but how do you gently tell them that this is going to be a long road to hoe?
What I do, because I also work as an academic advisor, and I work particularly with the freshmen, all the freshmen that I see, regardless of the color of their skin, I try to make it real for them. I let them know this is not going to be an easy process. It's going to be a 4-year battle or a 4.5-year battle, and that they've got to get prepared. Yeah, let's be realistic. It may be a 5-year battle, so I let them know this is what it's going to take. I don't try to sugarcoat it for them. I tell them you've got to do X, Y, and Z. We talk about issues such as time management, trying to make sure you're controlling your time. Are you taking classes which are conducive with your lifestyle? Are you a single parent? Are you married? Do you have children? Are you taking care of aging parents? Those kind of things as far as my incoming freshmen. With my high school student that I see, because I'm very honest about the kind of person I was, I knew in 9th and 10th grade, I spent most of those 2 years goofing off. I was just a goof off. It's just that simple in 9th and 10th grade. So when I'm talking particularly to high school students who are 9th and 10th graders, I tell them point blank, don't do what Alan did, which was take a lot of easy classes, goof off, and just run the streets, because when I got to college, I paid a terrible price for it my first year in college. In spite of my mother telling me, don't do this and don't do that, and my father just pounded it into my head. I was 17, I thought I knew everything. I didn't know anything. So I try to tell students, this is how it's going to be. Don't take easy classes. You've got to be prepared, because you're stepping into a whole different realm.
We're talking about educating students too, and that was talking about the ACT. I think it's important to reach students at the 9th grade level, have them take the pre-ACT or the pre-SAT, because then, number one, not only do they get a little bit of test sophistication, it kind of lessens the anxiety about taking the test, and then they can see how the courses that they have yet to take in the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade will be relevant to the whole process. And it may cause them to take a little bit more attention to them. A lot of times I ask students, what do you wish you had done differently in high school? And invariably the answer is, I wish I had taken it more seriously.
One of the things that I think parents don't know is that when I was growing up, there was only, kind of one shot. You took the SATs or the ACTs at a certain time in the fall of your senior year. Sometimes you could take them at the junior, but I mean, there's a lot more, because they have the PSAT, I mean, you know, the early on,
Yes.
so you can look at strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes parents aren't even aware of the importance of that. I mean, students may or may not, because they hear about it a lot at school, but parents may not understand, so they may not be getting the support from the parents, not because the parents don't care, but because they don't understand. This is something new maybe since you were in high school.
You know, in piggyback, it's like the whole process of getting the students from high school to higher education is systematic. It's a whole. It's going to involve the student, it's going to involve the parent, the institution, as well as the high schools. And in actuality, you can't really do one without the other because they're both so vital to the students. When you look in terms of first-generation college students, you have parents who maybe up until the student was about 16 years old was regarded as all-powerful, all-knowing. I had all the answers. I'm mom, I'm dad, I know exactly what it is. Now you're hitting me from the avenue I know nothing about. I'm not quite sure how to support you on this. I'm not quite sure how to even do the research to get all the information you need to make this successful for you. So I'm either going to do one or two things. I'm going to learn as you learn, or I'm going to back up and maybe not be as supportive, not because I don't want to, but because I don't know how.
have the knowledge.
Yeah, and once again, the institutions can play a significant part in assisting the parents in that education process as well.
I saw a lot of that having grown up in South Omaha. A lot of the students I went to high school with, their parents worked in the packing plants and things like that. And so they, although there were college prep curricula, they wouldn't enroll in any of those classes. And because they just, you know, they just weren't, they just didn't. Why set yourself up for failure? I mean, part of you says, I can do it, I want to, I see, I know that I have a better shot at a better salary and a life for my family.
Oh, exactly.
But I don't want to be disappointed. Do you get a lot of that sort of mixed messages even from the inside of these students?
I think you get a lot of those kind of messages at times. Also, when I speak to high school students, I try to tell them, don't give in to peer pressure, which may mandate that if you take those kind of classes that are going to prepare you for college, that you're going to be considered a square or you're going to be considered out of the loop as it is. Because we have to be honest, kids are going to be easily influenced by their peers.
Exactly.
So sometimes they're going to say, well, I'm not going to take that calculus class that I need to take, or I'm not going to take that trig. I'll just take some general math so I can get by so nobody thinks I'm a square. So one of the things I particularly push to students is I say you can't listen to your peers, because you see your peers will tell you to do one thing, but to be real about it, if you don't prepare yourself, you're going to find yourself somewhere saying, would you like to supersize this or something?
Exactly.
And that's just being real about it.
Exactly.
Okay, so we, let's talk specifically at UNO, and I don't like to do that a lot on the show because I like to make it broader, but UNO has suffered an inferiority complex for many, many years, being the West Dodge High. That's when I was here. But it has grown. The city itself's inferiority complex is starting to diminish. Do you fight any of that, A, when you're recruiting, B, even after you get them here saying, well, my friends went to Creighton, Yale, Harvard, somewhere else, anywhere else, but I'm stuck in Omaha. I mean, do you fight any of that?
It's almost like you can't help but fight it, but there's ways that you can fight it. During the time when I was at Creighton, it's amazing because I was recruited all over. I mean, I went from California to St. Louis to Chicago, and it's interesting because most of those students, you couldn't pull them out of their states. And the students here in the state of Nebraska can't wait to get out of the state of Nebraska because somehow there's this perception that life is going to be so much significant so long as I'm away from my parents. And so I'm going to leave the state of Nebraska. Then you also have that misconception that this is West Dodge High. The wonderful thing for UNO and for us as recruiters and also those that are working in retention is when we can dispel those myths. Most students that come here are amazed at the curriculum. There are programs here that you are not going to beat anywhere else in the state that UNO provides. And so that perception, I think, is lessening a little bit more. Not as much as we would like, but it is lessening because the students that are leaving here, they're saying, I got a quality education, and that is what they will get here. But somehow that rumor consistently goes amongst people who have never stepped foot on this campus.
And I've talked to a number of students who have come back to Omaha, I should say, because they went elsewhere and found out that they could get the quality type of education right here.
That's frequent.
All right, so we get the students here.
Yes,
How critical is the support in the first year?
it's extremely critical.
It's very.
Extremely critical.
For the College of Education, we have a program design which focuses tremendous attention on freshmen, because if they can get through the first year, get through what I call the first wave, the first 5 or 6 weeks when you're here, because you've gone from a teaching environment in high school to a learning environment. If you can get them through that first 6 weeks, and I think the first semester, then the impact of what they're trying to do tends to lessen. I've been amazed just in terms of students I advised in, say, August, to see the difference maturity-wise between then and November. It's sort of like in November, they're like, I think I have a feel for this. I know I can do this, as opposed to when they first came in. I mean, they're terrified.
Oh, yeah.
We see it all the time. And I think for UNO, recruiting is important, but since I came from corporate America, my understanding is this: your best advocates for a good or a service that you provide are your customers. UNO's students are their customers. You retain the students that you have here, they get through this 4-year process, get their degree. When they go out and they represent UNO in the city, they're going to have good things to say about UNO, and that's where the real recruiting starts. Somewhat from us, but I think more so from just good word of mouth that's out there from students that graduate and feel like they were well treated here, they were well supported, so they were happy.
All right, let's talk, all three of you are African American. Let's talk specifically about that just for a second. If you go out into the community where you socialize, where you have friends, and I know your ties aren't exclusively in that community, but let's just say, and you must go out there in your work,
Constantly.
at least. What is is it cool to talk about college yet?
Sure, certainly.
We
Getting
actually,
cooler?
We actually have an advantage in doing so. I think my daughter would probably be the most vocal when it comes to saying my mom was on the job 24 hours a day. If I'm at the grocery store and there's someone that just looks like they're high school age, sweetie, what college are you going to? Well, I haven't really thought about it. Here's my card, call me. Let's talk about it. Yeah, it's real cool. And sometimes it's so amazing that that student will call. They will, and if they don't call, their parent will call. My son said you saw him at the store and asked him X, Y, and Z, and is there any ways you can provide me with a little bit more information? That is a prime opportunity to say, why don't we set you up with an admissions appointment? We're going to call the admissions office and connect you with a counselor there. Let's see if we can get you a tour, and if your son has defined or at least vocalized in terms of the specific major that he's interested in, let's see if maybe we can even get him to either talk to a professor, sit in on a class, or maybe talk to a student from that profession, because sometimes that's all it takes. We had a system where we would send out cards and say, you know, just we're thinking about you, if there's anything that you need any help, call us and let us know. That student will be like, I'm going to UNO because they're the only ones that called me and said that they wanted me. And sometimes acting as if you want that student, which we do, is the biggest plus in our favor. Exactly. But yeah, oh no, it's not hard. It's a very easy task, and we do it all the time. It's actually automatic.
You see someone who looks particularly sharp, and you say, what grade are you in? What school are you attending? Have you considered college? Let me get your name, and so you can call the counselor and meet with that student. And students are, you know, someone is actually taking an interest in me, and that can be a part of not only the recruitment process, but then they have a contact should they decide to come, where they know that once, you know, we get all the recruitment spiel about what the school is going to do, but you have to have that other portion of it that's going to support the student when they get there. So students then have a contact person and can say, well, I'm going to go see Mr. Black, I'm going to go see Ms. Crowder, or because they saw me in the community and I know them and they're going to look out for me.
I want to get a little more in retention, but I do want to ask this question. It's got to have made a difference to have more minority teachers in the junior highs, grade schools, junior highs, and high schools, which gets back to why you're recruiting specifically for the College of Education. I mean, for a girl, any woman role model is better than no woman role models. But as an African American or Hispanic, or certainly the best is to have someone that you can just relate to.
Right.
And the numbers are getting better. We still have a ways to go. But do you think that has an effect?
It has had a very positive effect, and we're so happy with it. It's almost like a really wonderful plug-in for the Minority Intern Program that also comes out of the College of Education. It has had an impact, and once we make those inroads into the college counselors component that's going to be making even more so, because those numbers will increase in that avenue too. It's those counselors that are within the high schools that have been very instrumental in at least disseminating information and also opening the doors for us at the particular institutions to get to those students.
You know, I debated asking this question, but I think, and I'm assuming that people that watch the show are a little more sensitive to it, but I'm going to ask a real blunt kind of question. Why do we have to spend so many resources to keep people in school? I mean, either they want to be in college or they don't.
I think it's important to utilize those resources, because once you get to college, it's not a guarantee. There are some problems or concerns that one may experience when you get there. I guess a very simple thing, that mind could be the cure for cancer. It could be a cure for this, or some type of strategies that we have to give every student, an opportunity to see what they are capable of doing. So it is important to utilize those resources and come up with some ways to not only keep them in college, but make sure it's a positive experience.
Now, I ask that because it's a segue to something that ties into what you said, is looking at the student as a customer, a client. We have often thought if you can't pull yourselves up by your bootstraps and you can get through college, then you're just not cut out for it. There's a whole different approach in higher education, because, number one, because these people's minds are a terrible thing to waste, any person's mind. When we're in a job situation where we are foolish, downright foolish, if we don't train every possible mind, even if you don't care about the goodness of the mind. So these are, you're looking at them totally different than 20, 30 years ago when, oh, make it or break it.
Exactly. I think we take another initiative. We have a student, come into my office, we're going to talk about it. How are your grades? Oh, you're doing okay? What is okay? See, are you comfortable with that? Now, I know you can do better. So not only do they get the support, they get encouragement to let them know that we do expect more from you, because there's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't expect something, then they're not going to measure up to that. So we have to support them and encourage them and let them know that we feel that they're capable of doing this.
And it might be self-defeating as a society to continue that mindset about pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. And
I heard a comedian, I'm politically incorrect, and I can't remember which one, that says my boots don't even have straps, so I don't even know who coined that phrase. But for the most part, everyone's environment is different, and it depends on that one's environment, what happens from there in terms of their developmental process. But as those of us that are in higher education, we're in it for one reason and one reason only, and that is to assist that student in becoming successful and productive in society. This student that I recruit here that says, Ms. Crowder, I am going to law school, that's going to be my attorney probably 4 years from now. Or the one that says I'm pre-med, well, I have a small one, that might be my child's pediatrician, but at some point in time, somewhere along the line, they're going to say, well, maybe if it hadn't been for Ms. Crowder handing me her business card at Baker's when I was sacking groceries, who knows? Sometimes just that caring makes that difference. So I don't know how those of us in education, and maybe also within the community or any profession, cannot do that. It's automatic. You hear the stories all the time of teachers that tell about that one little thing. They said, sweetie, you have long fingers. Boy, I bet you'd be a great pianist. And that student never thought about it, but now they're playing, concerts, Bach and Beethoven, and they graduated from Juilliard simply because someone said, you have wonderful hands. I bet you'd make a great pianist. And they didn't even know they had those undiscovered talents.
The reason I ask that too is because we are coming off a vote on a lid and state spending, and that, regardless of whether that passed or not, there is going to be pressure from above. There's certainly pressure from below, the taxpayers, to look at, do you remember, you probably do, Alan, the OPS lid, you remember it because you're from Omaha, cut out the frills. And deciding what a frill is in education is, if I were an educator, it would be tough. If I were a taxpayer, it's easy, it's easier to say, well, this and this and this and this. But this is not a frill.
No, not at all.
When you have a program such as like within our office, we share it with orientation and first year programs. That is so vital for that first year incoming student. There is no way that that could be cut. That student comes in contact by going through orientation. They make initial contact with that advisor. They also have an opportunity to talk to an orientation leader that gives them the lay of the land, so to speak, of campus and the various resources that are available to them. But they also bring their mind at ease in saying, it's okay. You're taking first year freshmen that have only been out of high school 3 months. For the past 12 years, at least a good significant 4 of them, they've been in high school where teachers and counselors are saying, you need to do this, this,
Told
and this,
you
and
what to
this.
do.
And now within 3 months, we're like, but you're an adult now.
Expect you to be adults and
You can
do your
do
own
this.
decisions. And
Maybe I can and maybe I can't. And if we don't grab that student by January, they're not returning. Because they're not going to connect to the campus, and they're not going to feel a part of it, and they're going to feel like, I told you I couldn't do this. First year orientation is significant in any institution.
We started, this year, we started a Students of Color orientation. We had students come in, they got to meet with some of the instructors so that they know it's okay. You can approach an instructor, you can ask for help. Instead of the high school fear about, well, you know, I'm going to just sit back and wait and see if they call on me. So I think that's been instrumental. We've had some mixers for students and faculty to get together so that, again, they can see that these are other human beings and they're open for me to ask questions, they're approachable, and that can have an impact on students' desire, or, you know, they really helped me here.
You know, when I was here at UNO, I was in a sorority, and I can't speak for or against them except to say that there was a lot of human contact. We had sorority advisors who checked on our grades, and of course I had Miss Cariso, my freshman counselor here. She was, but I mean, it was that contact. I think there were times when I would have done too many TGIFs. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I did almost too many as it was, but do you know what I'm saying? That first 6 months is vital, that human contact from people that you have some respect for.
I think also what happens when you make that transition from high school to college, in the case of, say, like a UNO, where you're coming here where there's over 13,000 students, there's that initial shock and you're thinking, what did I commit myself to? So a lot of times students are just looking for somebody that they can talk to, that maybe they can vent to and say, am I going to get through this? Is this going to be okay? Because if students have a point of contact with somebody they can say, you can talk to Ms. Crowder, you can talk to Ms. Williams, or you can talk to Alan, that eases the transitional period. And ultimately, that's what's going to increase the stats for UNO for retention. Because if you let them leave and you haven't done the best job possible to keep them here, what's being said in the community, when they go back to that community, they're going to say, well, UNO didn't care about me. UNO wasn't there to support me.
So then you're
whatever.
fighting all the baggage they might have with them, and
Absolutely.
then more baggage to boot.
And I'm a firm advocate that sometimes misconceptions become accepted realities. When students will say, well, I didn't get this and I didn't get that. A lot of times it's not the fault of UNO because students have to take responsibility.
Well, we've got like 10 seconds. Give a plug for what you've got coming up next Thursday, the 19th here for minority students.
November 19th, Recruiting for Diversity, Careers in Education. We're bringing high school students of color between grades 9 and 12 to the Milo Bell Student Center, 7:30 to 12:30 for Symposium on Education.
Call the Department of Education at UNO if you need more information.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining
Thank
us.
you for having us.
And thank you for joining us on Consider This.
Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Allegiant Health,